Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We have games to discuss. We had a rather, I would say, uneventful game yesterday. Not a especially great playoff game, but we'll discuss that and the upcoming game 2 of Tampa and the Islanders. Let me start off with the pre-show here, just with something I related to Russ when we talked before the show. This is the political season. This is the season where lawn signs are prevalent everywhere. So in whatever neighborhood you're in, you're going to see Trump signs, you're going to see Biden signs, and you're going to see local candidate signs. Well, in Buffalo, I saw 3 signs that said Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs 2020. How friggin' lame. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm a big football fan, not as much as hockey or baseball, but I would never put up a sign for the Yankees or a sign for.
No, I wouldn't either. Like, to me, it's just why bother?
I mean, it's just absolutely lame, just stupid. But anyway, start with the pre-show, Russ.
Okay, so I got an interesting email. I get them from time to time, and this one came from a website called usdirect.com. And ultimately what they did, they have a business section, and they put out the listing of presidential pitches throughout the years. I don't think I would have guessed that FDR was number 1, but FDR was number 1 by far. Like nobody's even close to him.
Go
ahead.
You want to know why?
Go ahead.
Because the Washington Senators were in Washington.
Makes sense.
Why. And he threw from not from the dugout, but from the first row, because he was obviously because of polio, he wasn't going to throw.
But he's not the only one that's done that. Nixon threw from the first row.
Yeah,
a bunch of them have. But going through them, it was interesting because Taft was actually the first one to do it on opening day.
Right.
And he did it twice. I wouldn't have expected him to do it twice. Like, that's a guy who, if you want to talk about a non-athlete.
Yeah, he put a lot of weight behind those throws.
He did.
Ooh.
But
Woodrow
Wilson 4, Harding 4. Now, Calvin Coolidge, he tied GW with 6. That was like 4th place. 2nd place was Harry Truman, which, again, makes sense because there was a lot. Baseball was king in that time, and he was very popular. Eisenhower won behind Truman. I don't know if I would have guessed that. Mike, would you have?
Well, he was there for 8 years.
Yeah,
so
but still.
And you also have to factor in when it comes to FDR. First, there was Washington. Second of all, he was 4 terms. His first election was 32, and then he died in 45. So he was on his 4th. I'm sure through the first 3 terms, that's when everything happened. In 44,
but Obama was there 8 years, only did it twice.
Right.
So he certainly didn't maximize that.
They started cutting back on things like that also. So
yeah,
I consider that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clinton did it 5 times. He was a big baseball fan. Like, I basically, when the Mets retired Jackie Robinson's number, I had to wait an extra half hour to get in the stadium because Clinton's limo was right in front of my car.
Well,
but he did attend. Like, he was a big baseball fan. But it's interesting to see the list. Obviously, the guy who's left off is Trump. He has never done it.
Well, the funny thing was, remember, he was supposed to do it.
Yes.
For the Yankees, and then they canceled it because. And there's conflicting information here. It was almost like he said he was going to do it, and the Yankees never even invited him.
Right.
Or the Yankees,
they didn't invite him.
What happened?
It's because he was buddies with Randy Levine that he just figured he could just go and do it anytime he wants. And it's like he forgets that, hey, this is the New York Yankees. Like, they have a long list of people who throw out first pitches and such. You can't just cut the line. And so they didn't let him do it.
Well, I still remember the first pitch, or the presidential pitch for George W. Bush for the World Series in 2001. I remember
the flag jacket, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I remember the There was a documentary on HBO where Mark Grace and Derek Jeter both talked about, you better throw one down the pipe or people will boo you in Yankee Stadium. And Grace said, that was probably the best presidential pitch because it was, he threw it right down the middle.
He did, and he had
Jeter asked him if he was going to warm up also before he went out there to make sure he threw a strike.
Sure, but most of them do warm up. So I give him credit. And look, if you don't think he was scared, I'm sure there was some nerves going on too. So, that's a big deal. Also today is Roberto Clemente Day. MLB finally did something for Roberto Clemente. I think everybody's going to wear 21, which is great. I was just over at my dad's house the other day, and we talked about. I asked him if he remembered because, I could be a bit of a nudge as a kid, and when Roberto Clemente passed away, which was I think New Year's Eve of the '73 season, he passed away, and it was on a humanitarian effort. And I remember at that time, I said to my dad, I want to go to the Hall of Fame for my birthday. And then he was just like, yeah, okay. And then I heard they were doing something for Clemente. They made a wax statue of him, and they also had like his game used uniform. And I said, we really have to go. And we went. And that was the first time I went. And it was really terrific because obviously I'd watched him play. Obviously the throw from the World Series in '72 was the best throw I've ever seen in a World Series. So many things, but the funny thing about it, and this is something that I never picked up on, Jan, because even though we watched him play, I had to watch a documentary because a lot of those pregame interviews you never saw, he would always complain about something that he was hurting him. He'd be like, yeah, I'm doing okay, but my elbow hurts, my knee hurts. And then he'd go out, hit 4 for 4. So there was a lot of, I used to love Roberto Clemente.
Yeah, he was viewed a little bit as a hypochondriac. He definitely was. But Clemente manning right field was fun to watch. The only guy I would compare a little bit, Dave Parker's arm from right field a little bit, Ellis Valentine's arm from right field a little bit. Yeah. But Clemente had a great arm, right? Obviously, we talked about his 3,000 hit, I believe, came off John Matlack on September 30th, right before he passed away. And in addition, if I remember correctly, the Hall waived the waiting period.
They did.
And elected him immediately right into the Hall, which is one of the rarities that they've done there. To be able to enable them to go in immediately. And, look, last at bat, 3,000 hit. Pretty special in terms of not necessarily obviously what happened causing it, but the fact that he was able to notch his 3,000 hit in his final at bat.
And he also had to put up with racism. I have a 55 Bob Clemente Topps card. And it's like, really? And that's what they did back in those days. They would make those guys sort of like more Americanized. And so they called him Bob on his card for a few years. And then I guess at some point he must have complained or something. And then they changed it back to Roberto. But yeah, and the other funny thing, people may like this or not, but you know how like you take a foreign language class? For the name Russ, there is never a comparable name. In the Jewish religion, there isn't. I had to pick Reuven, which is Robert. In Spanish, there isn't. So when they asked me, and I was in, I want to say 3rd or 4th grade, they're like, what name do you want to pick? And I said, Roberto. So that was there is an Italian version of Russell because is there? Okay. Yeah, I'll find out from if I go to anywhere, let's say it's Pikes Peak, Hall of Fame, whatever, I would say there's a 75% chance I won't be able to get a magnet with my name. I have about 4 of them on my fridge, but they're hard to come by. Well, it's fun. It's funny because there are 2 different spellings of Michael. There's an EAL and then AEL. Yep. Years ago, like you find that like the keychain that has, and I sort of got, they ran out of the AEL and all they had was the EAL, and I wasn't going to buy one that had a misspelling, so I passed over it. One more thing before we start the show. My buddies over at TSN 1050 in Toronto, a great afternoon drive show called Overdrive with Brian Hayes, Jamie McLennan, former NHL goalie, and Jeff O'Neill, former Leaf, former Carolina Hurricane. Isn't that Noodles? Noodles is McLennan. McLennan. Yeah. And they were having apparently it was a slow news day because I think it's because the Blue Jays are being successful in playing in Buffalo. They were talking about Buffalo's main claim to fame, which is chicken wings, that and blizzards. And they regaled how wings in Buffalo are overrated. Oh,
give me a break. I mean, I love the guys, but maybe this was just a troll move or whatever. But if you're talking about Anchor Bar wings, yes, they're overrated. If you're talking overrated, if you're talking about Buffalo wings in Buffalo, I'm sorry. I've had wings in other places, and they've been good. But no place are wings as good as in Buffalo.
I will say this: my brother went to UAB, right? So in the early '80s, like '84, I was up in Buffalo, maybe '85, something like that, when he was graduating, and that's when I first tried buffalo wings. Never had them in my life, and they were great, right? And back then, it really was the only place. Now, Mike, I would say, in the 21st century, there are a lot of places that learned how to make great wings now, because it's really become a higher priced menu item than it used to be. It used to just be kind of like fast food
10 cent wings. Yeah.
10-cent wings. Now it's become like more of a delicacy, not really, but you know what I'm saying? It's a little bit highbrow. And so a lot of places have come out with decent wings. Still, Buffalo has the best that I've tasted, but I've got a good place here. I mean, I would say they're probably third from the places I've had in Buffalo.
No, they're great. I've had great wings in Toronto. I've had great wings like when we've gone to NHL drafts. I'm just saying consistently, I could name about 10 to 12 places. The one place that Joe Yurden suggested, I went and got wings there a couple weeks ago. They were fantastic. There's about 10, 12 places that are sort of under the current that are really good.
Joe knows food. That breakfast place that he brought us to, that's a great place.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, guys, sorry. They're not overrated. If you're talking about Anchor Bar, it's overpriced, overrated, and you get killed if you go to the restaurant. But anyway, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, September 9th, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, we'll start with a little breaking news, not breaking, but just a release from the NHL. We'll get to the game from last night in a second, but the NHL revealed the 3 nominees for the Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year award.
Jim Gregory was a great guy, by the way. He used to always do day 2 at the draft. Remember, he would be the guy announcing, and he was just so delightful. And I would always see him, and I had seen him back since 2001. Just a delightful guy who loved to do that as a job. And Mike, I would say he was still there. Was he still there in Vancouver?
Yeah, I think that was his last one.
That was his last one, right? And he was in his 80s.
Yeah, he was a very well-loved guy, former Leaf general manager, did a great job in the 70s as leading that team to, I think it was a conference final where they got swept by Montreal. But no, he was a great hockey executive and very well respected throughout the league.
Cam Young's asking who has the best wings in Buffalo. It's Gabriel's Gate. Okay, go
ahead. Stop it. It's a secret place. It's a secret place that I will not reveal publicly. But the 3 finalists for the GM of the Year award, hence named the Jim Gregory GM of the Year award, are Julian Brisebois of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Lou Lamoriello formerly of the New Jersey Devils and Maple Leafs, now of the New York Islanders, and Jim Nill of the Dallas Stars. Now, okay, let's talk about this because Brisebois, I think, rolled the dice the most of anybody because he gave up, and we talked about this before, he gave up 2 first-round picks and a player in Foote, Nolan Foote, that they took in the first round in 2019 to get Blake Coleman from New Jersey and Barclay Goodrow from San Jose. And based on the way that those two are playing and the fact that they still have another year on their contracts, those were good deals, but they paid a very steep price. He also gets Zach Bogosian off the scrap heap at the deadline for nothing as a UFA, and they made some other they had to make some other moves to become cap compliant and sign contracts like Braden Point to a 3-year bridge deal. So I see the reasons why Brisebois qualifies, but in a year or so, Russ. And this is a yearly award, but in a year or so, this guy is going to be very challenged because they're in cap trouble.
And to be fair, I killed him a couple of years ago for not doing much. I think he did a good job. I actually would give it to Jim Nill because even though this guy is not my favorite goalie, as everybody knows in the chat room, he did sign Anton Khudobin to a 2-year deal. He did sign Joe Pavelski to a deal. he made sure Gurianov didn't sort of lose his place on that team, and he's a very important draft pick of theirs. So I look at Nil and I say, you know what? For people initially, they were like, yeah, he's not doing much, right? Those are two key acquisitions right there. I mean, two big ones. So
I mean, the chat rooms bring it up, and I'm thinking is also, I mean, so it was done after round 2, which is probably why these are the 3 guys that are on there. But you can make a very strong case for Joe Sakic.
Sure,
very strong case for Joe Sakic.
But because what you just said, it's coming into
play. But again, so it's based upon who won round 2, right?
Yeah.
You also talked about if Colorado hadn't had 7 guys out, the likelihood they would have advanced. And in terms of the way he built this team from where they were to where they are now and where we all think they can go in the future,
right?
I kind of think Sakic did a lot better job than even the 3 guys on the list. Lamoriello should get a lot of play. Bringing in Pajot clearly was a good move. He gave up a number 1, and he paid a lot to get him. But you see what he did around him in terms of bringing in other guys. So, in my opinion, could have made the top 3.
Here's what Nil did. He signed Pavelski, very high price contract. He signs Corey Perry on a 1-year deal. He brings in a veteran on defense in Sekera, who's on their bottom pairing and has played well in the playoffs. And he signs Khudobin. So all those ads, plus getting, he got Esa Lindell extended. And I don't know if you factor in GM of the year, or you factor in the draft, their draft scenarios in terms of drafting Heiskanen, drafting Gurianov. But I'm talking about for just this year. I mean, those are significant moves. But again, a year down the line,
Colorado did the same. You can make the same argument, right? He brought in Kadri, he brought in a Mesnikov, right? I mean, these are not small moves.
Well, but again, if we want to go most impactful to get to where they are in the playoffs, Nil has been most impactful with the goalie, because Ben Bishop was the goalie we all thought would be the guy to bring him there. And Khudobin at least got him to this round. And now maybe it's a little up in the air, but he did. And Joe Pavelski, while we killed him in the regular season, has been a god in the postseason.
Yeah.
So I think it's Jim Nil.
And if you're talking about Lamoriello, he makes the trade for Pajot, and he signs
big. That was big.
And he signed Semyon Varlamov. But other than that, it's basically the team that he inherited.
Right. That's why Lou just didn't do enough. It's not that Lou did a great job, but he didn't do more than these guys. That's the way I look at it.
So, but yeah, it would sort of be interesting to see who wins that. I honestly, I'd probably pick Brisebois because I think he rolled the dice the most, and I think he took the most chance in that situation, but he also, it may pay off in a Stanley Cup champion.
Well, he's also had the best team too.
Right. And the thing is, even though they've traded the equivalent of 3 first-round draft picks, they still have a phenomenal minor league system.
Yeah. Now, Davey Jones in the chat room goes, sometimes the best moves are the ones you don't make. Yes, that's true, but there's not a GM award for not doing anything, for standing pat.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat mentioned the name for, I think they're talking about the Wings, Swanee House. Russ and I have both been to Swanee House, never had their wings, but if you want a $3 Jenny Cream Ale, that's where you get it.
Yeah,
that would be more suitable to cleaning off the bird crap off of your car than to drink it. But
that was big in college, though. One note on Jim Nil, a great story. When he was with Detroit, he used to be in charge of their drafts, and he said when it got to draft time of the year, which obviously wouldn't be this time of the year, but it just made me think of it because we're getting there. He said one time he was out doing the lawn, but while he was doing the lawn, he was going through their draft board and decided that he needed to make a change. So he stopped doing the lawn and ran into the house and called the guys to make sure they got this right. And it was about a week before the draft. So this guy is always thinking about hockey.
Yeah. Now, he couldn't have thought much about the game last night, because to me it was fair. After the first goal, it was a fairly dozy performance by the Dallas Stars. Now, again, I think all of us picked Vegas in this series, so seeing Vegas bounce back as they did is not surprising. Having Dallas having trouble beating Robin Leonard, who's, what is it now, 4 straight shutouts or something like that.
I mean, he's the best playoff goalie. We've said it before. Right now, he is the best playoff goalie. Everybody could say Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky is the most athletic probably the best goalie regular season, but Leonard's been better in the playoffs.
But Jan, Dallas in that game, they were guilty of numerous stupid penalties that gave Vegas a number of power plays. I think their second goal was a power play goal. Dallas needs to basically play almost letter perfect like they did in game one to beat Vegas. I don't think they're going to get as many scoring opportunities on the Vegas team defense than they did against Colorado. And with Leonard back there, it's going to be really tough to beat them. I still think this series is going to go probably 6 games because I think Dallas physically can compete with Vegas, but yesterday Vegas was clear and away the best team.
I talked about yesterday, right, that Vegas looked like they had no legs to them. The 3 games in 4 nights, the back-to-back.
Yeah.
They came into that contest not looking anything like the team that had won the series against Vancouver. And I'm sure after the first period, it was zip-zip. They were a bit frustrated. And then Pete DeBoer said, obviously, after that first goal, he felt a little bit the weight being lifted off all those teams, all the back of everybody, right? So what Dallas did was similar to what the Islanders did. Stupid penalties. Gave him the power play. Finally, Carlson took advantage. And then you had the third goal, which was just a beautiful tic-tac-toe kind of passing play, but also showed the patience and the skill that this team had. So, as you said, I found it a bit interesting, though, that he turned to Ottinger in the third period.
Give him a rest.
Work and also just maybe trying to change the narrative a little bit and trying to change the viewpoint a little bit. But
I was happy for
Ottinger. They didn't do much at all in the third. I mean, they kind of just clamped down defensively and just kind of played out the win without putting too much pressure on Ottinger at all in that third period.
Yeah, I think Bonus said it in the post game. He basically said after 2 periods he was surprised the score wasn't 6-0, and it probably would have been that, if it wasn't for Khudobin. So I think it was simply give him a rest because he had played 3 games in 5 nights, and they know that he's it's clear that Bishop is never going to get back in there again. It's going to be Khudobin the rest of the way. So this was an opportunity with a game that clearly was out of their reach at 3-0 that they weren't going to make and if they made a comeback then great, but I think it was an opportunity to give them a little bit of a rest.
Again, I want to mention that in the post game, listening to Pacioretty, who I have great respect for, he's like, look, that wasn't a good game for us. We knew it. We knew we had to up our game, and they did, and Dallas didn't. And now Dallas is going to have to face that amped up Vegas team. But also, I noticed that Riley Smith again was starting to get chances. I got to say this one more time. Dale Talon traded Riley Smith, and they made it seem like this was a positive in the day, and his $25 million contract to Vegas for a 4th round pick.
No, it's worse than that. They gave them Marchessault to take
Riley
Smith.
Yes.
Right.
So
Marchessault had a pretty good year that year for Florida as well.
He did.
Right.
And they get a 4th round pick. That's it. And Smith, by the way, lifetime in the playoffs is 54 points in 62 games with 18 goals. Like, this is one of the worst moves that you could ever possibly make. And you got to believe that GMs still might do it again in this next one because of cap considerations.
The Shea Theodore move was also a pretty stupid move at Anaheim. I mean, that ranked right up there.
Oh yeah, it does.
I was going to mention it was
Alex Tuck.
Well, right. I mean, Chuck Fletcher with the Alex Tuck and Halla situation, but to me, Anaheim is the worst because they were stuck because Kevin Bieksa wouldn't waive his no move clause, and they didn't want to lose Vatanen or Josh Manson. Vatanen, who they ended up trading a year later. So they traded them Shea Theodore to prevent them from taking those guys, and I think they took a defenseman who was already, I think he was on the injured list. I can't remember who it was, but so maybe somebody in the chat knows. But basically, they gave Shea Theodore away. And remember, Shea Theodore was a prospect that a lot of teams were very interested in.
He was an offensive defenseman out of Seattle. Like, I was high on him in the draft. He was a known guy, and everybody knew if he got a little stronger, he'd be very dangerous.
Now, interesting thing I saw earlier this morning, Jesse Granger, who covers the Vegas. I think it's for The Athletic, but I'm not sure. I'm not looking at his profile right now on Twitter. But he reported that he says, my belief is at this point, the Golden Knights' plan is to sign Robin Leonard to an extension. And sources around the league have indicated to me that those talks may be already underway. But I'm here, so that's not a surprise based on all of a sudden the chatter from Alan Walsh and the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury is now the number 2. So if we interpret that, first of all, what do you think if Leonard, if Vegas goes on to the Stanley Cup final, Leonard is getting on a long-term deal with Vegas? I would think he's going to get about as much as Fleury is right now in the 6.5 to 7.
Yeah, he's going to get that same deal. I mean, there's no reason not to give it to him. He's proving it at the most important time of the year. So I think you have to give it to him. And I think if you've looked at Leonard, he's been a pretty cool customer in most of these games. I mean, he really has gotten it all under control. You have to give him that deal. And Fleury's definitely getting traded. Like, there's no question.
Now, Jan, do you think – I mean, we know that Lundqvist is a different story than a guy like Fleury. Lundqvist is or Fleury's 35. How old is Hank? He's 37.
39?
Yeah, okay. And he's got 1 year left at over $8 million.
$8.5 million, but that $8.5 million cap.
Right.
But I think it's $4.5 million salary because of the way they structured it.
Right.
It would have been $5.5 million. He got $1 million in terms of the signing bonus already.
Right. Whereas Fleury is a $7 million cap hit, but I'm not sure. I'm looking up the money right now to see how much it actually is in terms of actual dollars. Fleury is $7 million. The last 2 years of the deal, 6.5 and 6. So they front loaded it for this year, but still, I think the key for that is the $7 million cap hit. I don't know if they can trade a 35-year-old Fleury and see if anybody takes him at $7 million. I would think they'd probably have to shave $1 million or $2 million off of that.
Likely, yeah. I mean, again, you need up to half of it to move him. So the problem I'll use, quote unquote, is, will somebody look to make a move early and try to eat it, or they'll wait to as we talked about, the goalie musical chairs ends and see who's left without a partner and see if they can move him then?
No, I think somebody would try and get Fleury early because he's a guy that can lead you there. If someone like Calgary wanted to get involved, they would probably throw Rittich in the deal so there's a backup for them and then give them something else. I think you could work that out. And I think a team would take Fleury early because him on the market, probably the best guy you can get on the market.
Right. And,
a 1 year run. Mark my words.
But he's got 2.
I know, but I'm just saying, I know that. But for a 1 year run, like I'm thinking I'm going this year, I'm going to take Fleury. I don't know if he's good for a 2 year run, but I think he's good.
But again, we've talked about it already. Look at his numbers the last several years. His numbers have declined.
Yeah, but his defense
that first year in Vegas.
He's still not on a top defensive team. Nowhere close to that.
So wait, Leonard is
Leonard's better than Fleury as a goalie right now.
Okay.
But if Fleury had a better defense, he'd be better.
So who's got a better defense that could trade for him?
Here you go. All right. Fleury, first year, 46 games, .927 save percentage, 2.24 goals against. Same save percentage in the playoffs in 20 games. Fantastic. Second year, 61 games, which is too many for a 35-year-old. 2.50, still respectable. .913 save percentage, which is a little above average, but not fantastic.
Right. And look, this year, 49 games, 2.77 goals against, .905. That's below average. So he's not, as I say, he's not trending in the right direction.
But I will also say,
and you have 2 more years on the contract.
I know, but here's the thing about Fleury. He's not the kind of guy that probably likes the bubble at all. And I think I'm just telling you, the way he is as a personality, as an athlete, I think if you get back to like regular hockey, he's a different goalie too.
But the numbers he posted this year,
I know,
were without a bubble.
No, I know, but what's his playoff numbers? I mean, he did have the one good game. Is that the only game he played? This
year, his playoff numbers, I think it was a 9. Hold on a second, I'm pulling it up.
Because I still
9-10 save percentage in 4 games, 2.27.
Yeah, I still think he can improve on that with a team that's a little bit.
The question though is who's going to want to acquire him, and does he have a no movement clause, Mike?
I I mean, Colorado may be a team that
No,
lets
he has a modified no trade. Well,
the problem is you have two guys who were signed also, right? Both
doesn't
guys
matter. You can figure that out.
Yeah, no, I mean you can
move Francouz if you had to. Like
you could bury half of Francouz's contract in Colorado Springs or wherever their minor league team is. Well, okay, this is the thing. If you're talking about trading Fleury, Colorado was one of the teams that I would have looked at because they have the cap space and they have a window. I don't think as many. I know somebody mentioned in the chat. I don't think that Fleury in Toronto is a good fit. Not because he's not a good goaltender, and not because I think it's the cap hit, and I think it's the fact that he's declining. I think the Leafs, if anything, they're going to go younger.
Yeah, their defense isn't good enough either. Like I think that would be problematic. I think if for whatever reason, if
Calgary.
No, if Minnesota were able to move Dubnyk, if they decided that's what they wanted to do and brought in Fleury and split him and Stalock, that could be a big upgrade for them. And they have a pretty good defense still.
Yeah. So a couple.
Edmonton's definitely, Esmir's right. Edmonton's definitely a possibility.
I mean, Edmonton's definitely in the
possibility for everything because we still don't even know what Edmonton is.
Right. We also know that. I mean, it depends if the two young kids, Bouchard. And take that step forward to be able to be part of that blue line next year.
Right.
Now, one more thing about the game last night, and then we'll move on. I thought that the NBC crew sort of overemphasized the importance of Ryan Reeves returning to the
definitely.
line. I mean, it was like, okay, and in fact, they were making a big deal about him drawing a penalty on Klingberg. Klingberg knocked Reeves on his ass. I mean, which was surprising to me because Klingberg doesn't have a reputation of being a big, tough defenseman. And he knocked Reeves. He took a penalty, but is Reeves a spark plug and they purposely use him on the first shift of the game to stir up things? Yeah, and I'm not saying he's not an ineffective player, but it was like Wayne Gretzky was coming back.
For under 10 minutes, they made too much.
Well, I think part of it also is they looked so lifeless, quote unquote, in game one.
Yeah.
But also you have to factor, and we talked about, the 3 games in 4 nights, the back-to-back games was probably a bigger contributor than the return of Reeves to the lineup. Getting that extra day of rest, to me, rejuvenated them more. But I do think Reeves can be a spark plug because he will take the body and will shake things up, but he's got to play on the right side of the edge. Too often he goes over the edge.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about a couple different things here. Interesting column from Pierre LeBrun in The Athletic yesterday, interview with Wayne Simmons. And, Wayne Simmons, Russ obviously has watched a lot of him.
I've interviewed him a lot.
and great guy. Has had a very good NHL career.
Excellent.
But I think most people recognize that he is not the player he was 3 or 4 years ago. Although, last year, and it was mostly, remember, he signed a 1-year, $5 million contract with New Jersey, and part of that was to get to the cap floor for the Devils. Right. It wasn't because Simmons was clearly declining when Philadelphia traded him to Nashville.
Oh yeah,
he did almost nothing with the Predators in the playoffs, and then he goes to the Devils, and the Devils signed him to a 1-year deal, and 3/4 of the way through the season they trade him to Buffalo and eat 50% of the salary. And he didn't really account himself that greatly with Buffalo. What I'm saying here is he's still an effective player. He's still a good player. He's just not a $5 million player anymore.
No, he's just a guy that now can play that truculent hockey. He doesn't skate nearly as well as he used to. But if you have the puck in the offensive end, you need a guy to go in the corner. He can do that. If you want him to start off a period and start trouble like Ryan Reeves, he could do that. If you want to just put him in to cause trouble for a few shifts, he can do that. He's still a decent hockey player. If he gets around the net, he still can score a little bit, but his hands aren't what they were either.
Now, the subject of the column was his future, and he's from the Toronto area. Him and his wife moved north of Toronto a few years ago.
Yeah.
And there has been, and me covering the Leafs, I know that the word about Simmons and the Leafs have been out there for 3 or 4 years. But now with him being a UFA, and probably the situation around the league where not a lot of teams are going to have a lot of cap space, he may be one of these veterans who signs a 1-year deal for, like somebody in the chat was suggesting, like say $1 million, a little over veteran minimum. And I know in the column, he was still referencing the possibility that Buffalo would be interested, but Buffalo is a non-playoff team.
Right.
This could be a marriage for the Leafs that would make a lot of sense, Ross.
I mean,
you pair him on the fourth line with Spezza if he comes back, who actually had a pretty good year. And as Russ said, second line power play, put him in front of the net a little bit, and that would kind of be his usage. You can't play him a ton. The speed, which was not great to begin with, is no longer there. The hands aren't necessarily there, but you're not looking for him to score 30 goals again. You can probably get 10 to 12, maybe a little more in that kind of usage, and you also have a fourth line that also has a bit of an identity and won't cost you a ton to put together.
No, it won't cost you a ton, but again, with Spezza, who's also not fleet of foot, you have now created yourself a very slow fourth line, which I'm not sure you'd want to do. To me, this would be like why would the Leafs want to sign like Eric Lindros at the end of his career? They would never do that, but they did. And they would do it again if they did it with Wayne Simmons. It would be the same kind of mistake. It would be like signing him 2 or 3 years after the fact, and I wouldn't do it if I were the Leafs.
So where's a better fit then, Russ?
I don't know if there's a good fit anywhere. I don't know if I would sign Wayne Simmons. Honestly, I mean, I like the guy. I just watched him play last year, and I said he has too much mileage on him. He's been beat up so much. He's been a warrior. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't sign him. For my team, I would not take Wayne Simmons under any circumstances because even now you need to have a certain amount of speed on the fourth line. There's really no place you could hide him. Now, you made sense in what you said, Jen, and if you want to throw him in front of the net on the second power play, fine. But again, I think he slows the fourth line up too much. I wouldn't sign him.
Well,
it hurts me to say it because I really like the guy.
I don't think he would be a fourth liner. I think he would probably be a third liner.
With who?
If Toronto signed him.
But with who? Who's he going to play with?
He would probably play with a guy like Kerfoot and maybe a Barabanov or.
Okay, so they're going to have to wait. They're going to have to wait. Let him get into the zone first, and then set things up, which is problematic. Like it's going to slow down the flow for them if they want to have that be a cycling line.
Yeah.
Okay, because Kerfoot could do that. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, let's say this. I think that Wayne, and I'm being put in a position of speaking for Wayne Simmons, but I don't think Wayne Simmons thinks he's a fourth line guy. I think he thinks he's maybe a bottom six guy, but I think he still thinks he can score maybe 15 to 20 goals.
Oh, he can't do that.
Right. Now, I don't know if that's possible, but
he will talk and say he can do that because he's a proud guy. He can't do that.
Right. Now, yeah, and that's the thing. If he's gonna be somebody that the Leafs sign, it's probably gonna be close to the veteran minimum. And
you gotta look at the precipitous drop he took from 2017, 31 goals, 24 goals, 17 goals combined, 8 goals. Like the drop is undeniable.
He's not a scorer anymore. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that.
No.
What he used to do in the past is clearly not what he can do now.
And most of those goals did come in front of the net. Most of them.
Right.
All right. Let's switch to some draft talk. There was some mentioned yesterday that the draft dates has been moved by a couple days. I believe what it's now, Russ, the 6th and 7th.
6th and 7th is the draft. Free agency starts the 9th.
Yeah, right. I can confirm that for sure because I'm going to be working that day.
Which one?
What do you mean, which one?
We just said 3 dates. You said I'm going to be working.
Oh, the draft. It'll be 2 of the draft days.
Yeah, and the 6th and 7th is a Tuesday and
Wednesday.
Which is bizarre.
Selfishly for me, I'm pretty happy because I actually get to watch it this year.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But okay, so the suspense sort of is delayed here because obviously everybody knows that the number 1 pick is going to be. I don't think there's, in spite of the fact that a lot of people have said, well, maybe the Rangers are taking Lafreniere.
There's no trade in the world that they would take.
Yeah, the Rangers are taking Lafreniere.
Well, some guy in my blog, because I'm going to be running a mock draft, proposed, trading any guy off the Kings roster next year's number 1 and maybe more.
They're not going to do that. Why would the Kings do that?
Next year's number 1 and other stuff. They might consider it, though. I still don't think they're doing it.
The Kings would never do that.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying.
I know.
Overpay so substantially that you couldn't turn it down.
When is the last time we've seen an NHL team do that?
Eric Lindros?
Yeah. It's been a few years.
The Rick Nash draft, wasn't it?
Yeah, but not even that much. What this offer is more like the Lindros stuff. And that was after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not happening.
It's just not happening.
Now, like I said, the suspense starts at number 2. I don't think it's particularly. I mean, I
think they're going Byfield personally. I mean, I would be shocked almost if they didn't, even though they added Turcotte, they have Velarde, they have a bunch of centers in the system, but I just think Byfield the best behind Lafreniere in terms of prospects.
I would look at it this way. I ranked Byfield second because I believe he's the second best guy. But is it possible because Stützle started to play, and I interviewed him like 3 months ago. Is it possible because he started to play some center this year, has started to work on faceoffs, that they pull a Columbus Blue Jackets and say, you know, we love Byfield too, but if Stützle could really play center, he's capable of possibly scoring more points than Byfield in a season, which I think there's a chance of. My feeling is I go with the guy that has the history of being a center his whole career so far, and a very physical one at that. And that's why, and again, the offense is going to be there too. I don't think it'll be as high as Stützle, but I think his entire game is better in the sense that he's better defensively than Stützle, where Stützle definitely has more offense and more finesse. There's no question. Speed is actually close. Byfield, he's not like acceleration-wise, he's not the fastest guy, right? But when he gets going, he can streak down the ice and surprise the hell out of you and gets a lot of stretch passes, and I've seen the stretch passes. So he is a guy who I would take, but can I tell you it's 100% slam dunk now that the Kings are taking him? No, I think it's about 90%. But I think with the extra work that they had to do and the extra phone calls they got to make and everything else, they probably have had some serious discussions about it.
Okay, I have to rip this while it's up here. Why in God's green earth would Pierre Dorion trade his best player and the 3 and 5?
I don't think he would. But if they offered that, the Rangers might.
The Rangers would
seriously consider that.
Jeff Gorton would
jump through hoops, I think, to do that.
Yes, but I don't think Ottawa would do it because Ottawa really does need men. They need bodies. They can't afford to give up one of their starters and the future just to get this guy for marketing. They can't.
Remember, they experimented with Tkachuk at center last year late in the season. If they think he can actually be a center, he's big and tough and mean, just like his brother is. And if he can effectively play the center and make the transition like Pierre-Luc Dubois did in Columbus, you're not moving that guy for anything.
No, they're not. I'll tell you why they're not moving him. They're not moving him because of the marketability. He's already got a lot of buzz. I saw Beckett put a Ranger picture. They photoshopped a Ranger picture on their cover for Lafreniere. We're going to see a lot of that in the next few weeks. Their attendance has sagged. This will help their attendance. They like to sell memorabilia. He will sell it. He will sell, he'll sell it in Canada too, which again I don't think a lot of their players do. So they will sell a lot of them. And also, I mean, again, you look at him, he is going to get so much coverage, and they, even though at times it doesn't seem like they want the coverage, they sort of need it now because now they're going through like a new phase. And eventually Lundqvist will be gone and the spotlight will be on him. And that's something the Rangers really do need. And it's, the last time the Rangers have had the spotlight be on a forward, you might have to go back to Jean Rattel for that.
Now, Ottawa is in a almost a very passive position because obviously they're going to take at 3 who LA isn't going to take it to. Like if it's Stützle, they take Byfield. If it's Byfield, they probably take Stützle. Unless there's somebody that they like that nobody knows about. And then at 5.
Well, I will say this.
Okay.
The clue that Pierre Dorion gave us, and even though I haven't done a mock yet, he said whoever we get is going to play this year. So clearly he is going to go with either Stützle or Byfield. Because when you look down the list, or at least when I look down the list, there's very few players that are going to play this year. Those are 3 of them at the top. And if that's what he's promising his fan base, then that's the way he's going to go.
Yeah, and then I mean, Jan, Detroit is in the unenviable position of being the sort of the sandwich pick in between the two Ottawa picks. So if it goes Lafreniere, Stützle, Byfield, or Byfield Stützle, then they're fourth. And now, if it's me and you're Steve Yzerman, and you look at the needs of that franchise, to me, I would take Drysdale, because I think their defense, even though they drafted Sider last year, they really, their defense is pitiful, and I think they need to build from the goal out. They still need a goaltender, I don't know.
I mean, could they take Askarov this early, Russ? We've talked about this before.
They could, based on what
they did it with Sider last year, right? Made a bold move taking him.
Based on what Kevin Allen said, there's no question they could. I mean, Drysdale's the best defenseman for me in this draft. Why would they pass on him, right? Because they're not particularly strong defensively. And, yeah, he's not going to play right away. But in a few years, you'll get a great defenseman who could possibly be a top pairing guy. Like, honestly, I think that is the best pick for them. But if they take Askarov, it wouldn't shock me. And if they went forward, like if you want to talk about marketing, Cole Perfetti just was playing in Saginaw. So he's an easy guy to market, and he is great to talk to. He is super smart, like really super smart. He's a smart human being. And he's also the smartest hockey player in this draft. I look at it that way, and I say any of those guys make sense.
So Ottawa clearly needs a goalie, right? We've talked about would they take Askarov, or is that too early for them? And would they take Drysdale if he slipped to 5?
Well,
Perfetti.
If they feel Detroit is going to take Askarov 4th, then they might just take him 3rd and get their other players with their other picks.
Well, okay.
But hold on. I don't think they're going to do that.
It's simple to do this because, okay, we don't know where Askarov is going. He could go as high as 4. He could go into the teens. You never know. The way I don't think it's likely. But if you look at the teams at the top half of the first round, and like we just said, I don't think he's going 1, 2, or 3. But Detroit, they need a franchise goalie. Ottawa, they need a franchise goalie. Maybe Anaheim starts to think that, Gibson, who's in his mid-20s, but maybe they want their future prospect number 1. New Jersey needs it. I mean, maybe Blackwood is the guy, but with Buffalo, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen hasn't played an NHL game yet, so you don't know where he is. Minnesota is I know that they think a lot of I think it's Capo Cajonen.
Yeah, he was the AHL goalie of the year.
Winnipeg's got Hullebuck. Nashville is sorely lacking in goal right now with but you remember Askarov is not going to play next year. He's going to probably be a couple years at least before he comes into the NHL. Florida's got Spencer Knight, and they've got Bobrovsky. Carolina, they'd want a goalie. Edmonton, they'd want a goalie. Toronto, they'd want a goalie. So there's 6-7 teams in the top 15 that might take Askarov.
I mean, I know where everybody thinks he's going to go, but you never know what a team's going to do. And we go back to Sider last year. From my early rankings, I had him in the top 10, and people thought I was crazy. Mm-hmm. But then, was I crazy? I mean, he got taken 6th. So even though you think Askarov's going to go somewhere between 5 and 10, that doesn't mean Yzerman thinks that. And that's where there is always a chance because, again, this is a franchise goalie. This isn't just, hey, I'm going to take – look, Jake Ottinger was a first-round goalie. It was asked of me on draft day for the pre-show on SiriusXM, what goalie's going first round? And I said Jake Ottinger in that draft. Mm-hmm. And he did. And I think he'll be a very good goalie. I don't know if he's a franchise goalie. Askarov looks like he could be a franchise goalie. And so that is something where that saves Detroit a lot of money and a lot of legwork and development if that turns out to be true. So that's something where you have to weigh it out and say, okay, is it worth losing Perfetti, Rossi, those guys to get this goalie? Because, and we know it's a crapshoot, but so, even though those other guys are terrific players, they're technically a crapshoot too.
And think of it this way. In terms of development, most of your development with a guy like Askarov is going to be done by the KHL team. Correct. Because like what happened to Ilya Samsonov, he was over in the KHL for 2 or 3 years before he came over to play in the AHL.
And that's exactly what Yzerman would do. And it's very nice for him to do that because he doesn't have to worry after a couple of years of signing the guy to an ELC. There's benefits. There's definite benefits.
So, Russ, how does he compare prospect-wise to Spencer Knight?
Well, I think Spencer Knight is better, but I've also seen Spencer Knight a little bit more.
Right.
I've seen Askarov, with the struggling in the World Juniors, but I also felt like, hey, he was the youngest guy in that tournament. That could happen to anybody. I feel like Askarov is more athletic than Spencer Knight, but Spencer Knight has like a core base of strength that I've probably never seen in another goalie. Like, I could post a picture from the combine, and if you want to talk like legs from tree trunks, they used to say, "Oh, Mike Richter's got legs from tree trunks." Nothing compared to Spencer Knight. It's like a football player's, tree trunks, and also great all around. So I think Knight is better, but I also think Knight's a franchise goalie too. So I think again the difference between Askarov and the rest of the goalies in this draft is great. Yeah, and so that's the other factor.
Remember, and Bardicus in the chat is talking about Detroit's goalie pipeline is heinous, and
yes,
but this is the thing with Detroit. I mean, it's going to take Yzerman a couple to 3 years to get that team back to a level of respectability because first of all, he's got to clear out bad contracts, and he's got to at the same time replenish the organization with young players. They've got some players that already in the organization, like Veleno, like Zadina.
Well, let's answer that because Funky goes, well, if Askarov doesn't prove out at 4, it looks bad. Well, it's not going to look great if Zadina doesn't prove out, and we all thought Zadina would play, and I still think he's going to, and it took him a little longer. So they're all a risk, guys. There's very few sure things in a draft, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, we think that Detroit has they don't have any superstar youngsters. I mean, no. Seider could be a really good top pairing shutdown guy.
Larkin's an A, but he's not an A+.
Right.
Seider's a B or a B+. They have a lot of those guys.
Yeah, Anthony Mantha is
like a B or a B+.
Right. So, but they need those young players that they've drafted in the top rounds. Like I said, Rasmussen, Zadina, Veleno. They need those guys. But I don't think any of them are going to be superstars. They're going to be those supplementary secondary type players. But they still need to draft those superstars. And maybe bottoming out the next year or two, they'll get that top pick to be able to
I mean, you got to remember, Askarov is very young, so you're not going to see him for a while.
Right. He'd probably stay in Russia for 2 or 3 years.
If Ranger fans were asked, should we draft Shesterkin, 5th or 6th overall a few years ago, would they have done it? A lot of them would have shied away. But now when you see the guy, you wouldn't be shying away. Same thing with Sorokin. Again, we're in an era now where there's a lot of, there was a time when there was the Finnish pipeline for goalies, and now there's a Russian pipeline for goalies.
Take some questions from the chat here. Andrew Perry asks, how screwed are the Penguins with their prospect system?
I mean, not screwed. They, here's the funny thing.
I was going to say, what prospect system? Because
look, they've had to trade some, but if you want to talk about in the last 5 years, one of the best drafting teams, it's them because they never draft high and they have a great success rate. So I don't worry about them that much in that regard. But yeah, for the longer you're trading picks, you are going to have a problem. I don't think they're screwed yet because here's where they make it up. They make it up on the college free agent pipeline. That has been massive for them. And until they get screwed that way, they're never really screwed because, again, they've been able to pick up defensemen. They've been, I still think Kalen Addison's a top pick. Hallander, I hated to see go, but, sometimes you got to make these trades. Last year's Poulin, I think Poulin's a little bit of a dice roll, but I think he's a good power forward. I actually think Jug Caulfield can play. I look at them and I say, Zach Lawson, I think is going to play. That's Jeremy's brother, both play the same position. They still have players, but again, for as long as they're getting their college free agents, they're in good shape, man.
Well, but I mean, they traded Hallander in the deal with Kapanen, and they traded Addison in the deal with for Jason Zucker. So the only first round pick they've had in the last 6 years is Poulin.
Okay, but how many of these are picks? Brian Rust, Chris Letang, we won't count because he's obviously a superstar. Gensel. Marino, they signed. Well, they traded for him.
They traded for him because he wasn't going to sign with that deal.
Teddy Bluger was a brilliant pick. I liked him all along, and he's another high draft pick. Right. Dominic Simone is playing. Most of them are draft picks, guys.
Or Zach Aston Reese was a college free agent. Yeah. They've been able to get college free agents.
They really have.
Yeah. So I mean and
none of them were superstars, but you have to, except for Gensel's real close, but you have to have those guys to fill in for the Crosbys and Malkins, and maybe Letang's going to get traded now. We'll see.
Jan, there was an interesting report from Rob Rossi in The Athletic yesterday regarding Letang, and Letang basically saying he would love to finish his career in Pittsburgh, but he thinks that the reality is that he thinks he's going to get traded before next season. Again, here's another situation where I don't know. It's nice to say, okay, we're going to trade this guy. Letang has a history of injury problems. He's making $7.25 million for another 2 years. Easier said than done that you can trade him.
Okay, but how about this, Mike?
Who's replacing him on their blue line?
Right.
I mean, you just traded a number one pick and a prospect to bring in Kasperi Kapanen to be a first or second line pair winger, and now you're going to go ahead and trade your number one blue liner? I mean, where's the logic in that?
I would say this. In the last 2 years, as injured as he's been, he's still played 61 and 65 games, and he's had 100 points combined. Name me how many defensemen in the league have done that. No Leafs defensemen. No Ranger defensemen. Like, I'm just telling you, that's – even though we're talking about Chris Letang after, the medical problems he had, and he had serious medical problems. I think he's a Hall of Famer because of that, because we all thought with the pulmonary problem he's probably never coming back, and he was great. Mm-hmm. But – when you talk about, I'm sorry, Letang was a stroke, right? He had he had a stroke. The fact that he's done this, but he's had 100 points in the last 2 years. Like, if this is the decline, a lot of teams will be lining up for that decline.
Right. So, I mean, if they traded Letang and didn't add another defenseman, their defense next year would be Dumoulin, Marino, Pedersen, Ricola, Jack Johnson. That's not good.
No.
They're great. I mean, maybe they plug in a free agent here or there, somebody willing to take a short-term 1-year deal. But it's not that's not a Stanley Cup winning defense. And you can say, well, they won a Stanley Cup with Ron Hainsey and Oli Mata being or Brian Dumoulin being their top pair. But again, that was Crosby 2 or 3 years ago at age 29 or 30. He's 31 or 32 now. Everybody's getting older. They've got a limited window. I don't think they can win a cup championship without Letang or without a defenseman. Are they going to go out and trade for Oliver Ekman-Larsson? Okay, then what are you trading for?
Right.
So, yeah. So
let's answer this question, please.
Yeah. So, okay, this is the thing, and this came up a week or so ago. Why would Bill Zito trade Ekblad? Now, you can say Aaron Ekblad is not the same as Aaron Ekblad before the concussions, but he's still Aaron Ekblad, and he's still a pretty good top.
He had his highest point total as an NHLer last year.
Right. So,
he played in 67 games. Like, I can't. And again, if you want to just turn Aaron Ekblad into a shutdown guy, you can do that. But they need the offense too. I would not do that. I happen to think he's only 24. If he goes a year without having a concussion, you might actually see a better Aaron Ekblad this next year or the year after, simply because the same as Crosby, he's still young. He might actually still continue to get back what we thought he lost, but he still had 41 points.
Jan, if Aaron Ekblad is on the trade market, if I'm Kyle Dubas, I've pitched a tent in Bill Zito's front lawn. Because I don't. If I'm Bill Zito, the first thing I'm trying to trade off of my blue line is find somebody who would take
Mike Matheson, but
first try to take, because Strawman's got, I think, 2 years left and he's aging. But if not Strawman, then somebody who would take Matheson off my hands. And Matheson is 6 more years.
Here's what's incredible about Matheson, Jan, and then I'll let you answer. Not only did I know it was a bad signing, but again, when Talon thought that he saw a little Duncan Keith in him, 4 years worth of points for Matheson is 91 points. 4 years. That's it. That's all I have to say.
If I'm Toronto and Aaron Ekblad is truly available, I'm offering William Nylander right this second.
Oh yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Nylander clearly fits the bill of a first pair defenseman. Offensively, he's been probably what we've advertised. Yep. Defensively, we know he's getting better. Clearly, the only issue is the concussions and some of the other injuries. But when he's on the ice, he's a difference maker. The only thing we're going to see is Florida really going to be in cost-cutting and savings mode, or are they really looking to replenish and build up their roster? So if they're trading Ekblad, are they bringing in salary and talent with him, or they're just looking to move salary to be able to get rid of the $20 million or so that was rumored last year before they ended up moving Trocheck?
I think Zito's first course of action will be trying to get some sort of draft pick for Mike Hoffman for negotiating rights. I think you could get a 6th rounder for that. You might as well not just let him walk. I think he's going to try and do that for some of the UFAs and get some more picks in this draft. I actually think that's his first thing he's going to do. He's
probably going to try to see if he can get Dadonov on a contract, because it sounds like they have a chance to re-sign Dadonov where they
need him desperately.
Yeah, because he was top line, second line guy.
Yep.
So what are you giving him? 4 years, 5?
I'll give him 4.
How much money?
Well, what do you have? 50 points. He had 50 or more points last year, didn't he?
Yep.
Dadonov,
yeah, he's got to get 5.5. I give him 5.5 for 4.
I mean, that's let's see. He had the last 3 years in the NHL after playing for St. Petersburg, he's had 28, 28, and 25.
Yeah.
Remarkably consistent. And I think he was making in the 4s. So I would say probably
4 years.
Yeah.
Sign here.
But he is 30. He is 31, and that's the other thing you got to be scared about.
It's all right. I mean, it's only 4 years. That's why I'm not going 5.
He signed a 3-year, $12 million contract with him when he came overseas.
Yeah. Now, granted, Florida has the advantage of the Florida state tax, so they could pay him a little less, and he gets more of that money, and it's a flat cap. But if they try to lowball him too much, and I'm sure he wants to stay in Florida rather than go play for Edmonton, and especially in the winters. But is it worth $1 million extra to go play for the Oilers?
And by the way, I don't know if I want to even play for Colorado because they had snow yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Please, I'm not looking forward to this winter for many reasons. But yeah, no, I don't think Hoffman is coming back there, and I think they're interested in Dadonov. But But you may be right, Ross. It's like, you can get a 3rd round pick for negotiating rights for Hoffman, and that's a you don't have.
I mean, at best a 3rd. You might have to settle for a 5th or 6th because there might be a team that says, we're not going to we'll risk that.
No, one more thing about Vancouver. We talked about them yesterday. Jim Benning was on Vancouver radio, and basically, I said that they're going to be looking to clear some salary in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, with the new contract for Hughes, they can sign Hughes, they could extend Pettersson during this offseason because they're entering the final year of their entry level contract. So they may want to get that business out of the way, and maybe. Unlike, say Toronto with Mitch Marner, they don't want those players to put one more really good year on their resume and then be able to attract big money. Whereas they could give them really good money and save maybe a little bit on the long term. But I look at the Canucks roster and where they not sure what happened there.
Signed off on one and signed in on the other.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, because I had a bad echo.
Okay, sorry. Where they could save money, you've got Tanner Pearson and Brendan Sutter, both making close to $4 million, the other making over than $4 million, entering the final year of their contracts. So those might be easy contracts to move. Sven Barchi, I believe, was sent to the minors, so that might be a buyout.
Yeah, it's probably a buyout.
And the Jay Beagle and Antoine Roussel deals, though. See, these were deals a couple years ago, Russ, that we talked about, that we said these make no sense for a team that was in the midst of a rebuild. And now when they're good, that's too much money for third, fourth liners.
Yeah, it is too much money for third and fourth liners. I mean, you got to watch that. I mean, there's value to those guys, but those are the easier guys to replace with younger players too. You don't need like a veteran fourth line anymore in the NHL. You need at least one good veteran on the fourth line. Like the Islanders have Clutterbuck. You need a guy like that, but you don't need three guys like that.
And Jan, they want to re-sign Tyler Toffoli after trading significant prospects for him, but that's going to cost. So it's either they find teams that are willing to take on salary and them giving, and I think they don't have a first or a second round draft pick. So they don't have the draft picks to be able to convince these teams to take money on for them. They'd have to trade prospects. They might have to trade like an Ole Ulevi or somebody like that to get or a Höglander or somebody like that to get a team to take one of those players on and open up salary.
Right. But those kind of names are the names you clearly don't even want to move, even to move salary, right? Which is, we talked about buyouts and whether or not they're willing to dip into their pocket and do that. But the question is the savings on all those buyouts, because as we said, they clearly need help on the blue line. Offensively, we think that they should be relatively okay, but the blue line is desperate for uplift in terms of talent based upon what we saw so far in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. All right, so tonight we have game 2 between Tampa and the Islanders. Islanders looking to bounce back after being drubbed 8-2 by the Lightning. Obviously, the Islanders can play a lot better than they did in game 2, and based on usual. Well, they lost by 5 goals, so they're going to win. I don't buy that. I don't buy that BS. I think if the team is a better team, they're a better team. Now, I think the Islanders will be more motivated to keep this game close and maybe will play a lot more physically. And that's where I think it'll be interesting, Russ, is that if we see – I don't know if we're going to see Clutterbuck because he was injured in game 1.
I wouldn't even use him. I get that. I get he's an important guy in the room, but let him take warm-ups and just scratch him. Like, I just give him a game off. You're going to need him for the long haul in this series.
But Jan, there's talk about them putting Boychuk back in the lineup. There's talk about, so if they do that, and if they put Komarov and Johnston and Cizikas and what direction that they're going. They want to try to intimidate and run over the Lightning. And if they do that and take stupid penalties, the Lightning power play will kill them.
Absolutely. I mean. And also, Tampa's not a team that's going to shy away because they played against Boston. It's a heavy team and took whatever Boston could dish out, and they responded in kind. I mean, guys like Gord, Coleman, Goudreau, all those guys are willing to take the body and respond in kind. So it's not as if you're playing against a team that's a soft team either.
Yeah,
I do want to mention Wahlstrom scored a goal for AIK yesterday, a really nice-looking goal. So that's nice for the Islanders' future. Something that doesn't bode well and hasn't gotten a lot of coverage. Newsday covered it because they cover everything. I am really appalled that the new ownership group that has purchased Nassau Coliseum wants to turn it into a music theater and downsize it when the Islanders are done with it. Like, to me, it's like you wasted all of those taxpayer funds to what? Have it in size? What is that? Is that so they don't have to pay as much taxes because they'll have – I don't know. I mean, I don't understand the thinking behind this. But it appalls me because, you could get the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. You could do a lot of other things. And I think if they got the Sound Tigers, Islander fans on the island that could drive to the stadium would go to games. But I don't understand what they're doing here.
Well, they used part of the property already for Northwell Health. They sold it to. So it's feasible. Maybe they can do the same thing where they shave part of the property down and sell it off that they did similar to the other part.
Then just knock it down. Like, why did you even go through any of this?
I don't know.
And it's at taxpayer cost, right? A lot of it.
Hey, the Rats had to have some place to live.
Mike, stop. I mean, it may have a leaky pipe in the 300 section, but they fixed it. Come on, man.
Where are they going to park that Honda? But by the way, final note here.
At least the rats don't have to line up for a bathroom.
I'd like to congratulate whoever was responsible for finally canceling the Kardashians TV show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for eliminating a load of trash and a bunch of tramps from television. Thank you very much. For Jan Levine, who's still here, and Russ Cohen.
I think the last time I heard the word tramp was in a Cher song, but whatever.
Was it tramps, something in
Gypsies,
thieves?
Tramps, and Thieves. For those playing at home.
Yes, for those who were alive in the 1970s. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. I was going to make a